We have some regular Kickstarter Pickstarters, some pretty interesting ones that are available this week for your backing pleasure. First up is Thornwatch. If you're not familiar, this comes in part from the guys behind the Penny Arcade comic, and their other comic, Thornwatch, which is like an offshoot.
Yeah, if you've been following them, every now and then they do these little short stories of the Thornwatch world, sort of like small one-shot things.
Much more serious in tone, fantasy-themed setting, and it's usually when I'm like, tell jokes again, I'm bored, skip past this.
Is this before or after you stopped reading?
Before. But the aesthetic is, it's very... It's kind of Lord of the Rings-y-esque. I mean, I guess any fantasy thing is, but I'm trying to think of a better comparison. Ferngully, Avatar. It's kind of got some like mystical spirits and nature and forest.
Mystic Vale?
Yeah, sure. And this is a really interesting game, not only because it's based on that world, but because in terms of the play style, it's sort of like an RPG-ish, but really it's more like a card game. One player is the judge, and everyone else is a member of the Thornwatch, and you're like these guardians of the forest. And the judge actually has this storyboard, and they control enemies on the field and the map, but they're also, after each scene, there's this sort of choose-your-own-adventure aspect where the players can decide what to do next or how to handle a situation, and otherwise they're playing cards and abilities. They're moving figures around a map. They're rolling dice.
So is this a campaign or?
I believe, I'm not sure about game. I'm pretty, the one thing that they pointed out is you don't need the same players from game to game. So I think there are campaign elements to it, but it's not
it's not an obvious one-shot like a Tales of Arabian Nights.
Right. I think you could have continuity kind of as much as you want to have continuity. There are upgrades you can get and such.
So can I get all the other Penny Arcade characters to jump in this?
Hopefully there'll be promos. It does remind me a little bit of Mice and Mystics, too. That's probably a pretty decent example or comparison. But yeah, it definitely sounds unique and interesting. There's a print and play that you can do right now, and they want feedback. Which is nice of them. The art is, if you like the Penny Arcade art, it's that guy.
I would sort of hope, it's our story. We didn't really touch it. We're just.
I guess that's Gabe. Is the art?
Yeah, Gabe's the artist, I believe. I think Tycho is the writer.
And yeah, it's that. It looks pretty. It's very thick outlines, nice lush coloring and stuff like that. It looks pretty cool. Definitely sounds. It's already gotten way funded, so it's worth checking out. It goes for $78, which is hefty. There's a lot of.
Well, that does. Yeah. I think that does sound like. I mean, it does sound like a lot, but assuming the components that are in from what you've told me, that does sound a bit more fair considering a campaign story. Like if I expect a long sitting at a table, that's not nearly as bad as I can think of some other things.
I'm hoping there's a lot of variety in those missions, and there are different scenarios and different rules that could come into play. One of the other things I thought was neat is at the end of a scene, you can actually choose as a group if you want to go to the end phase or if you want another scene. So if you want to play a shorter game or a longer game, it's very easy to tailor that to your group.
Let's start with the end scene.
Yeah, maybe you could. I don't know. So they're trying to take that RPG-ness and bring it to more of a card dice game, which is cool. So check out Thornwatch on Kickstarter right now. But you have an actual RPG that you're going to talk about, which is called Mecha and Monsters.
Yes, this is actually the first standalone expansion from Teeny Frontiers, I believe it's called.
Teeny or Tiny? It's one of them.
Yes.
Depends how you pronounce your letters.
I was like, wait, is it spelling or is it you can't, I'm terrible with my language already.
I do.
But anyways, what caught my interest is I'm always a big kaiju fan. And this is actually an RPG where you actually you become a pilot and you design a robot and you go through a story and the person actually throws monsters at you and stuff. So I almost love this because I get to pretty much make my own Godzilla movie in essence. And Pacific Rim.
That's pretty cool. So specifically, you're playing as only monsters. Robots, not monsters.
I read Pilots and Robots from what I read, but maybe you can mess around with. But I mean, I could see both having fun. But as someone who's loved the Godzilla series, Pacific Rim and stuff, to me this would be like, yes, just give it to me.
It is very interesting because
It's also meant to be. It's not a regular book. It's like I think they said it's supposed to be like 8x5. Like so, this is meant to be like a small pocket almost.
Huh.
That you can just carry around with you.
That's always good. I would never think of a kaiju RPG.
Yeah, no, neither.
Says,
that's when I first saw it. I'm like, what? Why aren't they showing me anything for a board? And then I read, I'm like, oh,
yeah,
oh,
yeah, which is gonna be a box quote.
Do we have another box quote?
We have a million of them. They're up for grabs. We put them out, and like anyone can pick and choose.
That's actually it. Did we have another box quote?
That goes for $25.
Yeah, which I think sounds really cool, and definitely something we haven't seen. I feel like we haven't seen it in our
No, I mean
style.
I'm really curious to see how it actually plays because that's in practice because it's not something that's easily adaptable. I feel like to a Pathfinder or D&D you can kind of switch in and out different races or sci-fi fantasy. Like this is a pretty different beast. No pun intended. Not really a pun. Finally, another one involving monsters. It's called Nightmarium. Mm-hmm. This is a card game wherein you are trying to create different monsters, perhaps of the kaiju variety, of all kinds of varieties. Essentially, there are 3 types of cards. There's the head, torso, and feet. And as you're collecting cards, you're playing them to build monsters. The goal of the game is whoever has built 5 monsters first wins. But once you've completed one, they each have 1 or 2 abilities on the back. And as soon as one is complete, you go down the entire list and do all of those abilities. So it could be draw cards, play cards. Some of them will say there's a scavenger type where if someone else has an incomplete monster, you just destroy it. So it's basically a race, but what will catch your eye about it is the designs and the artistic side, at least that's what I like about it, and all the different weird combinations you can come up with. Did you ever have one, I feel like we've seen other games like this, but did you ever have, when I was a kid, there was like a book of dinosaurs?
I did have that.
Where the flaps come
and
out.
What this reminded me of, I actually backed a game from Sandy Peterson. And in this game, you actually got monster parts. You'd actually have a die you'd roll, and there's like a vampire head, a unicorn head, like a werewolf head, and you actually made a monster that way too. So I'm noticing this trend of build your creature with cards or dice.
And we've kind of seen also that Dastardly Dirigibles game was where you were building your blimp. Mm-hmm. There's sort of people like to mix and match and create something. It's kind of fun. I feel like, did we talk about that game on the show? Yours? I think so. Because it sounds, I've definitely seen concepts like that on Kickstarter before. But it's pretty neat. The art is really cool and weird and different. It takes place in like a dream universe, hence Nightmarium. And that one only goes for $15. And it looks like it's just cards. It's like a little box, a little case. I don't know what it is.
That sounds pretty good.
Yeah, so it looks kind of cool. Nightmarium. Ooh. Check out all those Kickstarters below, and if there's any that we missed, let us know what you liked from this past week or so, because we've probably a few have slipped through the cracks the past month as we've been off in our off period.